So I know we're running a little bit behind and we don't have a ton of time for our panel today, but bear with me as I try and rifle through the bios as quickly as possible. First, we have Larry Page. He's the managing director at Lewis & Clark Agri-Food. They're a late-stage venture early growth fund headquartered in St. Louis, Missouri, with a focus on plant science, animal health, food technology, and supply chain efficiency. They are investing out of Fund 2, a $260 million fund, $90 million of which is USDA licensed RBIC, and it made 25 investments. Prior to Lewis & Clark, Larry was an entrepreneur in residence for Nidus Partners, a partnership between Novozymes, Bunge, and Monsanto, which created companies around university IP. Dr. Larry Page received his PhD in biochemistry from Washington University in St. Louis. Next, we have Dean Didato. He is a partner with Innova Memphis, an early-stage venture capital firm. Dean joined in 2017 to manage the Innova Ag Innovation Fund, a $31 million RBIC licensed investment fund. The firm recently closed on their second farm tech fund and Innova's sixth overall. Prior to Innova, Dean was strategic accounts manager for the Vincent Group and has been managing ag bio startups for almost 15 years. He received his bachelor's degree in biology management from Marietta College. Next is Louis Brown, part of the Carrot Ventures team based in Calgary, Alberta. Carrot Ventures is a venture capital fund that creates new companies to commercialize early-stage ag tech, which otherwise would have no clear path to market. Their process is to secure technology rights, recruit an experienced CEO, form a new company, and lead the seed round of financing with check sizes up to 1.5 million Canadian dollars. And I believe Sestair is one of those companies, so shout out to Sestair. Louis has a background in financial markets, public company investor relations, and entrepreneurship with a lifelong connection to ag in both North America and Australia. He received his bachelor's degree from the University of Sydney. And last, we have Palandjian. He's the CEO and co-general partner of O'Leary Ventures, the venture capital arm for renowned global investor, author, and TV personality Kevin O'Leary, aka Mr. Wonderful. O'Leary Ventures is a generalist firm that invests from seed stage to growth equity across a broad spectrum of industries. They recently launched the Wonder from North Dakota, a partnership with the North Dakota Department of Commerce to invest $45 million aimed at bolstering economic growth throughout the state. Paul has prior experience as a managing director of the Trinity Group Limited, a UK-based private bank, and as a president of Intercontinental Real Estate Corporation. He received his BA from Harvard College and MBA from the Harvard Business School. Right, now we'll slow down, I promise. So let's just set the stage here. AgTech, it's relatively new when it comes to different startups and the startup ecosystem that exists in the US today. But Dean, you recently closed your second fund, Innova's sixth overall, which is awesome. How have you seen the AgTech world and the startup space change over the years that you've been investing to how it is today?
Let's make sure this is working fine. We started investing in the ag tech sector back in 2013, and there were very, very few folks really active on early stage at that point for ag tech and what we like to call now farm tech. Obviously, as Andrew said a few minutes ago, that's changed substantially over the last 10 years, and so there's quite a few early stage ag tech venture funds out there across the globe now. We're primarily focused here in the United States. We are, as Leah said, we are a fully licensed USDA Rural Business Investment Corporation. Our first fund, the Innova Ag Innovation Fund 4, invested primarily in companies here that are based in the United States, C Corps, where the IP is assigned to that C Corp, and the vast majority of those associates that work for that entity need to be located in a USDA eligible rural area, which makes it somewhat of a challenge to actually deploy and invest that money. What we have found, which is interesting, is that a large number of our portfolio companies that continue to succeed and continue to grow are from second, third, fourth, fifth generation farming families, where those founders have identified something and they've asked the big question, like mom, dad, grandfather, why is it that we continue to do something this way? There's got to be a better way? And so we've been blessed with some really inventive founders that have started a number of our portfolio companies. And so I think seeing those solutions actually come from the industry, from folks that know the industry and then can implement and execute on it, that's something that we've seen grown over the last 6 years of Fund 4. And we're really excited about the opportunity with our new fund, which we'll be launching next month. I think the other thing that we see out there is the influence now of a number of new funds in the climate and impact space, and them actually reaching back into the AgTech space and wanting to get deal flow and wanting to substantiate an impact, whether it be in soil technology, whether it be in carbon capture, et cetera. So those are some of the trends I think we've seen here recently that will continue to spur on innovation in the space.
Awesome, thank you for that. Maybe we'll build on, that future-looking, forward-thinking way to look at things. Larry, you kind of invest a little downstage from where Dean invests, sort of your Series C and beyond. Talk a bit about how you see companies needing to perform so they can grow into the future.
Yeah, thanks, Leah. So to Dean's point, AgTech really started 2011, 2012, if you look back at the history. And there were a number of funds in the early stage ecosystem that were specializing in AgTech because of the unique aspects of trying to start a business within the food and agriculture system. Long life cycle, capital intensive, and requires specialist founders that come from the industry. Our fund started in 2016 and exists to basically finance follow-on investments in the early stage ecosystem. So we're a specialist investor as well. We write $6 to $8 million initial checks, but what we saw was companies in Dean's portfolio and others that would grow to be substantial in size, be ready for growth equity investment, but would time and again stumble when they went to raise capital from Silicon Valley or Boston or these other centers of innovation, because the specialist investors that would raise their hands and say, yes, this company is making a meaningful impact in agriculture and is growing, alongside a changing industry, weren't there. So we exist to raise our hands, to help lead investments in later stage companies, and to make follow-on investments in food and agriculture at a later stage.
Awesome, thank you. So now let's switch gears again. That's a little later stage. Louis, you are there right at the inception of these companies. How does that change the way that you are looking at what's coming up in AgTech?
Yeah, I think it's nice to see the panel here. We have almost a continuum of the investment cycle, so it's great to have people like Larry and Dean who can carry on. And our goal with setting up these companies, firstly, is to bring great technology that wouldn't otherwise have a path to market, but also bringing really high quality deal flow to the investing community. We're seeing that AgTech is increasingly on the minds of generalist investors. Paul, coming from a generalist side, it's great to see how much sustainability focused or climate tech focused investors are really now looking to AgTech. And I think we're looking at solving some really big challenges in the world. And I think right at that seed level, the innovation coming from the farm. To your point, Dean, in terms of problem statements, we're out there. My role is trying to find technology that we can form companies around, and it's great to see our second company we just launched actually came from a farmer who had a problem statement, put together enough of a technology to say, okay, this will solve the problem, but I don't really know how to take this to market. And then we've built a company around it, brought in a very experienced entrepreneur who's had multiple exits before, and so trying to make that connection and then bringing well-capitalized companies through the investment pipeline and trying to give that opportunity for AgTech solutions to really come through from the grassroots level up. So.
Awesome. That's a great lead into Paul. How do you look at AgTech as a generalist and investor?
Well, thank you for having me today. From our perspective, our focus is to create impact in the state of North Dakota. We're managing money for the state that was part of a federal grant. And the specific mandate is to invest in small to medium-sized businesses with employees of 5 to 500 in rounds that are 20 million or less. So that gives us a very wide bandwidth. And as we've been going up the learning curve of the economy here in the state, 4 themes have emerged. You've had AgTech, energy tech, unmanned aircraft systems, and healthcare. So almost by default, if we're going to invest in North Dakota, we better pay attention to AgTech. And what we've learned is it's a massive market. There's a tremendous amount of pride in the state. North Dakota feeds the world. You've got an incredible foundation that's been established by the state leadership, local leadership, the incredible community of titans of industry that have quietly amassed huge amounts of wealth in the state, and they're now giving back in the form of mentoring companies, investing in companies, and creating this flywheel effect. And so, I'm just grateful to be here today and to meet folks like Dean and Larry and Louie. Those are the kinds of guys that we need to know, that we need to collaborate with, because we don't have the subject matter expertise, but we are willing to learn. And we think the opportunities are enormous.
And I just want to jump in and say, for an ecosystem to function, perhaps stating the obvious, we need all of the players that you see here and more. And especially, for us as specialists on this side of the floor, we need the generalists that are willing to learn and willing to raise their hand, because there's not enough capital in agriculture today. There could be 10 times more dollars invested in food and agriculture, and then we would be approaching the investment with ag as a percentage of GDP that you see in healthcare or software, for instance.
Awesome. Let's just build on that. What are some of the other challenges in ag tech investing, and maybe how does that sort of relate and compare to some of the other areas you've invested in? I'll let whoever wants to take this one.
Yeah, I'll probably take that. So we see, probably a lot like Louie, we see ideation at very early stages, pre-patent sometimes. Having a provisional hasn't been even put together. They don't have a minimum viable product yet. So we see stuff very, very early. There's a lot of coaching and a lot of mentoring that goes on. I think one of the things that we've encountered certainly since, even throughout the life of our fund since 2007, our firm, is a simple idea like, I've developed a new sensor. Well, that's great, but can you put a company around a sensor? Or is the sensor something that really is part of an overall more integrated approach or platform? And so trying to coach potential inventors and entrepreneurs into, well, do you really have a company here? Is it truly investable? Or do you need to build and look a little bit of a wider perspective on how this fits? And that helps, obviously, with their opportunity to raise capital. Or do they have, in the case, do they have something that's patentable and licensable, and you go down that licensing stage. So there's a lot of mentoring and coaching to try to figure out what is their best pathway to market. And then the other piece, too, I think Larry brought this up, everybody's having problems finding talent and employing talent. And one of the things in our as we get in so early on these deals, in many cases, we don't have the right execution team there at the time, or as that particular portfolio company moves up through a capital stack, through, say, a Series C, Series A, onto Series B, we have to bring on more talent, more experienced talent, different types of talent in order to orchestrate and get that traction and be successful in the marketplace. So some of those things right now are really a natural maturity of the industry, having invested in the industry now for 6 years out of one fund, starting another fund. And so these are the things that I think it's a challenge, but it's also really exciting for us right now, because we obviously are all looking for really talented people to help execute on the investments that we've made.
Oh, sorry, I was going to riff on that a little. Obviously, with our model, I think Sostera wouldn't be any more than an idea if it wasn't for Mike for coming in and leading the charge. So I think that's a great example of trying to bridge that gap. Obviously, there's a lot more to go there. But I think in terms of the challenge, the other piece that I wanted to bring in is we see a lot of ideas pitched to us or technology that comes to us that solves a problem for society, but they want the farmer to pay for it. I think we're getting some chuckles here. So I think that's fundamentally a challenge that agriculture in the bigger picture has the potential to solve some of our really big world problems. But trying to get the economics of it right is huge, and that's alignment of policy, investment, understanding, and listening to the farmers. And that's one of the things I'm really excited about this conference, is having the real voice of farmers here and having farmer conversations. I was at an AgTech conference recently, and there was not a single farmer in the audience. And I think we might be missing something here. So that's a piece. And then the other one I was just going to mention is the the herd mentality. I think we've seen a few waves of over-promising and under-delivering. We saw that with precision ag. I think maybe biologicals are potentially bridging into that territory. So I think really proving out the model and not getting too much into a hype cycle from an investment perspective.
Would it be safe to say that maybe those are areas you're putting a little less favor on? And then I'd love to hear, what is everybody else's take on what's your favorite technology out there right now, and which one are you staying away from? Louis, why don't you take it?
Sure. So I think we're really excited about the fact that a lot of our technologies have a direct benefit to farmers, but almost as an afterthought have these huge waste or sustainability benefits. So our second portfolio company we just launched is that really got the potential to have a huge amount of waste reduction in the storage of potatoes. Again, it just seems like a small thing, but these things build, and really excited about all the technologies we see that have these really great environmental and sustainability benefits. And was it what we're staying away from?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think controlled environment agriculture is something that has had a bit of a bubble. We see one of those a week, and again, I think that was a blending of, the analogy is we don't invest in a soybean farmer to create his own machinery for every farm, and I think there's a blending of production and tech there. So the companies there, I think there's been a bit of a bubble around that.
Keep in mind, I'm a biochemist, so this answer may be, I'll try not to be too sciencey here, but within alt protein, we spend a lot of time on that category, and one area we're looking at a lot for our next fund is precision fermentation. So use biomass-derived inputs to create high-value products that are either food additives or materials that are alternatives to petroleum-derived products. So the move towards a more sustainable, renewable method of producing things as inevitably over time, we move away from petroleum and forever chemicals. Where we've chosen to stay away from is plant-based meats. So there are all sorts of issues. I think that there's a second wave of plant-based meats that may solve a lot of these problems, but probably preaching to the choir here to most of the people in the room, but the processing, the ingredients list, the fact that it's not as healthy as meats, there's all sorts of issues with that industry, and as a result, an area we've chosen to stay away from.
I'm trying to think of where we've stayed away. We are very upstream grower focused, so to this crowd. And so we have steered clear of actually seeds, traits, and germplasm, mainly because we write some of the first checks, and we recognize that anybody who's tracking in one of those tracks is going to need a considerable amount of time, a considerable amount of money to get through the regulatory processes that are involved. And our edict really is, coming from Farm Credit System and USDA, is can we find those technologies and identify them as quickly as possible to get them out to the grower and farmer and be impactful. So we kind of look at our potential deal flow through that kind of lens. So we've stayed away from, so we don't do, for example, food, beverage, branded plays, CPGs. One of the things that I've been kind of excited about is, which was mentioned a little bit earlier, is let's focus on what we think are the real problems: labor, automation, the control of inputs, a better control of inputs. We heard about a little bit earlier here about water. Anything along those lines that we can see to be impactful, that we can help push them forward as quickly as possible, that's something that's going to stick with us and kind of something that we're going to dig into a lot deeper.
God, that makes a ton of sense. I've never heard the analogy. You wouldn't ask a soybean farmer to create his own machinery, but I love it, and I'm going to use it. So, Paul, when you look at the state of North Dakota, what gets you really excited? Why are you here and not in Boston?
Well, it's a good question. We fell into North Dakota several years ago when Kevin made an investment through Shark Tank in a company called PRX Fitness. At the time when they appeared in Shark Tank, they were doing less than $1 million in sales, and that investment then turned out very good for Kevin and for us as it scaled to over $50 million a year in sales during COVID. And that afforded the company a cash flow stream that allowed them to then build a $20 million manufacturing facility here in Fargo near the airport. And it brought Kevin out to North Dakota. You know, one of the special sauces of a TV platform is it allows you to kind of story tell for the portfolio companies that you get involved with. And so there was an update on Shark Tank, and Kevin came out here and went ice fishing and got to know the people, met some local leaders, and came away from that with a thesis that, you know, basically the thesis went like this: why am I investing in sweaty kids in a hoodie with a ping pong table and a keg of beer when I could be investing with people from North Dakota who are thoughtful, experts, have a disciplined throwback, humility, and culture of hard work, where it's a wonderful place to raise a family? That's a long overlooked and underserved part of our country, and we better pay attention to it, because they're going to drive innovation and change in the United States and beyond. So that was the thesis that had us then, when we met with state officials, and they said, well, you know, could you do more here? Is there something that we could do together? Because the storytelling aspect of this, I think, is important. One of the negative aspects of having this North Dakota nice and humility is you guys don't like to brag about yourselves. But we don't mind bragging about you, and you've probably seen a little bit of that on TV lately. So, you know, we think we're particularly sophisticated in capital markets. We have a golden Rolodex that allows us to bring outside capital to the state of North Dakota. We're looking at the opportunity set. We think it's unreal, and we're in love with the people. So we've decided to scale the nexus of our asset management platform in North Dakota, and we've hired an industry veteran that's come on board at the partner level. He's advising us now, and we're going to transition into opening an office and staffing all of our compliance and accounting in the state. And we're here for the long term, and we're super excited about it.
I'm not from North Dakota, but I'm happily a Bison. So thank you for everything that you've done bringing that to North Dakota. Again, you both talked about how your funds are RBICs, Rural Business Investment Companies, kind of a similar impact that you have in rural America, North Dakota, in the flyover states. Can you talk a bit about how that plays into your investing thesis as well?
Sure. Yeah, so by the nature of being food and agriculture specialist investors, roughly 30% of the deals that we look at a given time are rural in nature and are headquartered or have their largest offices in rural America. So we have a parallel fund structure where we have what we call a geographically agnostic fund that will invest across America, and then the rural fund, it's usually a 2/3 to 1/3 split in terms of the ratio because of the percentages we see within our deal flow. However, we're able to pull money in deals that are found in rural America from both funds. So in a similar way, we're leveraging this geographically agnostic fund to match dollars in rural America 2 to 1. Food and agriculture happens where concentrations of populations are not, and often the best businesses are built in an area where there's not, you know, a direct flight and a large metropolitan area. And we're very passionate about helping to feed the world, and that's done in rural America.
And just, I'm going to jump in, but is it right in saying that as you went out and looked at companies to invest in, almost all of the ones you found right away just happened to be in rural areas, and you found those first before needing to fill up that agnostic bucket?
Yeah, so interestingly enough, good point. Leah knows this, we deployed our rural fund actually a year ahead and several deals ahead of our geographically agnostic fund. So great point is we found more deals in rural America than at least viable deals to make investments. So even though we only found 30% were headquartered in rural America, the hit rate of actually getting a deal done was much higher.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. We so in Fund 4, we've invested in a total of 33 companies. We've had 3 exits or liquidity events over approximately 6 years. We know that an AgTech investment needs to be patient money. It takes time. And we know that because we also have invested in medical device, technology, and where I'm from in Memphis, we have a little company called FedEx with about 400,000 employees, so we know a little bit about transportation and what's disruptive in the transportation sector too. And those deals tend to mature a lot faster, so we know, at least on AgTech, we need to be a lot more patient, and we are. I think that, you know, in Fund 4, we've seen our portfolio companies have seen our dollar per dollar grow at about 5.5x. So for every dollar that Innova invests and our fund invests, they raise another $4.5, which is really significant. The other thing that we have metrics, obviously, under the program in the USDA is job creation, and we know that in some cases, in most cases, when we're making our initial investment, the founders may be 2, right? And they're building a team. But since inception, we've created a little over 300 jobs. So those are rural jobs with a rural impact. And so we have those metrics, which we report on, obviously, to USDA as well. So it's kind of the ARBIC system is very much an impact investor. Even though we don't bill that way, we obviously derive the economic value through that kind of program.
You've been awesome partners for Farm Credit, so thank you for that. I did tell you you get one surprise question, so here it is. 30 seconds, think it over. What's your favorite use case for AI?
I can tell one that I told Larry last night. So when you're besieged with deal flow, we have like 400 in our pipeline right now, lined up for Fund 6. Timing, and when we only have 4 people on the team, being succinct about time is something that we're very focused on. So we've been using ChatGPT to actually summarize a lot of inbound portfolio reports into summaries. And we've even compared that to Bard and tried to see which one actually represents the original documents best. And so we were chatting about this in the alleyway last night, I think. And we're excited about the opportunities that AI poses in our efficiency as we operate as a VC. And we can see lots of uses for it. And I think you'll see a lot of stuff from us. You might even see newsletters. You may see quarterly reports that are ultimately generated through that.
I think I'll go with a more general answer around decision making on farm. I think that there's been this huge wave of data, and what the AI tools I think will enable is better use of that data. And I think that's going to be the next big shift. And I think we've seen that equated to the internet when it first came out. When the internet first came out, the big companies were all about tools. It was Microsoft and Intel chips. But then the next wave of companies was the making use of the internet, the Facebooks and the Googles and the Amazons, who actually said, okay, there's the infrastructure, now what do we do with it? And I think right now we're seeing the AI infrastructure, and the next big wave will be the tools that enable farmers to make, and throughout the whole food production and distribution system, better decision making.
I, like everybody else, has probably played around a little bit with AI. We're invested in a few companies that are using machine learning algorithms and AI to create additional efficiencies. So I kind of get both sides of the argument. There's the kind of creepy side of AI, and then there's the practical application of AI. I met with an entrepreneur yesterday. I'm hoping to meet with him again today, that describes for me this problem, and it goes back to the question you asked earlier about challenges in the ag industry, that you've got this seasonal need for temporary employees that, given the supply constraint on labor today, that if you can use data and AI to create efficiencies that allow farmers to better manage their workflows and reduce the number of temporary employees that they have. That's a super interesting idea to me. That's a use case that I just learned about. I want to know more about it. The use of AI in herd management, all sorts of implications in terms of how that might tie in with sustainability and carbon credits, if you're better able to track the herds. the use of AI married with wearables and animals with GPS technology and the like. Super interesting. So, we're kind of a sponge trying to take it all in, and then we'll make some calculated bets on that.
And Louis, you just about took the words out of my mouth. That was the answer I was going to go with, driving towards true decision-making and impact, assemble disparate data and actually drive an impactful decision. So I'll go to my second answer, which would be the intersection of food and medicine. So I think AI is going to have a massive impact on uncovering nutrients that we may not be aware of today, that if we ate more of a certain plant or meat or changed our diet in some way, we would be able to fight off disease states in the future that would actually move towards food as a source of preventative medicine. So I'll do food as medicine as my answer.
Awesome. Well, those are all better than my answer of a meal plan for my picky toddler. So I just thank you all so much for being here. I hope that you don't get inundated with too many people coming up to you because you are the capital providers. But thank you, Grand Farm, for having all of us. And I hope you enjoy lunch coming up here soon.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.